Welcome. Now I'm feeling weird with light. We checked everything was dark, and now it's, well, I need my sunglasses. But, okay, the talk of today is kind of weird. It was just, I was getting into a weird space, and it's about what happens when, yes, you did your job as a domain-driven design practitioner, and then, well, something happens. There's a little bit of a transformation. This is a couple of mind maps that I created, wrote down during the preparation of this talk. There's a lot more. There's index cards. There's a lot of mess. But the whole story is just, well, at the end, conclusion would be something like we need to frame the conversation in the right way, adapt the language to the conversation, and then provide models to the decision making. Spoiler. Let's start from the story. Like, this is a foundation day, so maybe I need to provide some summary. And the story is the reason I assume you're here is because you want to make great software, and great software to improve somebody's life. But there's a lot of stuff to be done before this. In order to make great software, well, we need to design good software solution. And this is just the beginning of the problem. We also need to be building models. That's the reason why we are so much into domain-driven design. And the core thing is the curiosity driving us to, discover this domain complexity. So far, so good. That should be more or less the summary of what you've been following today. The starting point is that we are not expert in the problem domain, but we are curious. And we're doing this in an organization. You probably have seen this slide already if you were following some of my talks. The silos with their own knowledge, local expertise, local jargons, and so on. And then the knowledge distribution is not exactly as easy as we expected or wanted or dreamed. And so we have to navigate inside the organization. Plus, there's a complexity of the legacy software, maybe a gift from the elders, people that left or whatever. We have to decode it, we have to understand it, and we have to find our way from the business conversation, the actual implementation, our understanding, and getting pulled in all this direction to write good software. Okay. If you are here, that should be exactly the starting point. Challenge accepted. That's what we want to do. So what we do is starting to do a lot of things. Well, clearly, my favorite starting point would be to run a large workshop trying to explore exactly what's going on in this, in this organization. Sorry, water moment. In a workshop like this, we might be talking with maybe 20, 30 people, trying to model an entire business flow, trying to see the contradiction of the different versions of the wisdom about the domain. And, well, many things happen. We maximize the learning, and we visualize the inconsistencies of the business side. There is no way to make great software if the narrative is ambiguous or inconsistent. So we try to linearize this. We proceed with more fine-grained formats. This is still an EventStorming, but a little bit more moved into the design phase, process modeling format. We drill into the little step, decision-making, what happened at this moment. We dissect decision. We look at the connection between the different areas, and we try to visualize collaboratively the processes. Part of this exploration is the grammar, something like we start from a triggering event. A policy will be the moment where a given decision will be taken. We're gonna visualize and discover who is the person actually responsible for this decision. We visualize in blue the result in action. The action will be performed on a system. And of course, we need to discover, explore, find out what is the information needed to support a given decision. This is just a visualization tool, but it's also a pretty good investigation tool, because the moment you start asking what is the information that you look at, what are you looking at to take this decision, well, then you might get interesting answer, because some people are looking at two different sets of data. They might look at different sources. They might access sources in a different way, have different views, look in some places that maybe they should not be looking into, or maybe different people in the same role looking in different ways. This way of framing the conversation is actually pretty good for discovering all the little lies that you might have inside a business decision. And the key is, what are you looking when deciding this? Okay, that helps us discovering a few things. And then after modeling this, well, the things become more interesting. Looks like everybody is relatively happy when completing a workshop, maybe just because it's tiring enough. So, well, the moment you feel like, oh, we're done, oh, thank you. And then a few times we had the chance to, oh, no, wait a minute, let's run a couple of examples on the corner cases. Let's see, given when then, BDD style, which are the exact reaction of the system, of the organization, when we get into interesting corner cases. And it works really, really well when you do it exactly in the same room, because the people are still there. They feel like, oh, yes, everything is sorted out. Normally, if you find good corner cases, if you feel like, no, it's not exactly sorted out, we still need to ask, we still need to decide, which is fantastic, because now the uncertainty is not on our shoulders, but we need to get a binary answer, and we can implement a binary answer, not a vague one. Or we can keep the vagueness of the decision-making by moving the implementation into a human decision supported by a good UI instead of an automation. If we have too many exceptions, that's a way to discover them. Okay, still, we are moving into our journey. And then, I don't know how much you are into residuality theory. How much are you familiar with this idea or heard of it? Okay, well, then we also challenge the architecture with extreme scenarios, like flame-throwing lizards. That was the term from Barry Riley. And so that even we have a little bit more robustness, resilience, and well, future-proof architecture. And our job didn't stop there. After the workshop, we started building a context map. We started seeing which are the different independent models, how they are connected, how they are related to each other, dependent, and connected to the different people role in the organization. And we could visualize it. And we are not maybe keeping it on the wall, but maybe we're turning it into a digital format and use it as a reference frame for other conversation. And not only, well, it looks like a very long journey, but actually might happen in a shorter time. But I guess you were expecting something like this. We also distill domain knowledge into ubiquitous language and use it to describe bounded context. So in this scenario, we are getting out of the traditional idea of a flat dictionary. Instead, we are modeling independent bounded context on the same page, but also having a dictionary which is a little bit more lively, not only the list of terms, but also a common narrative that we can kind of compile in our brain and check if the language is kind of working. Okay, and finally, not necessarily in a waterfall fashion, maybe iteratively, prototyping and reflecting and improving, we also release robust, good software making someone's life easier. Okay, that's more or less what we should expect. Maybe different variation, maybe different tooling, a lot of curiosity, a lot of knowledge, distillation, formalization, crafting, sharpening probably, a lot of choices on the language of the perfect wording, but also on the perfect bubbling of bounded context. But yeah, let's say we delivered. Was hard, was fun, hopefully, and it works. So the starting point at the end of this journey is somehow different. It's not that we are not expert in the problem domain. We were not expert in the problem domain. Now, if we understood this to the level of precision needed to write good supporting software, we know this stuff. We know this stuff sometimes even better than our business counterpart. And this is not it's interesting, it's powerful, but it's also tricky. So what happens next? How many of you have been feeling this more or less in this situation? Like have thought for just a second, I know this stuff better than my boss. I'm in the right room. And okay. And so we have another problem, the language mismatch. And the little again here, just like, no, wait a minute, we already covered the language stuff. We learned the ubiquitous language, we did the bubbles, and are we still having language problems? And the answer is yes, because ubiquitous language helps us to inject precision in the conversation. It's a tool for modeling and modeling software. We are trying to adjust the conversational language to the precision of requirements discovery and describing a binary software artifact, but it's not the whole story. The whole story is just, well, maybe we set up something in terms of ubiquitous language. This is, we can talk business with the business in a nice way, but there's still something like, which is pure business jargon, like, well, review on, or finance, or buzzwords that are coming from different conferences. And we still have our tech jargon. We are talking microservices, DevOps, and other stuff that the business would never actually learn, and also stuff that we should be really scared when our bosses start using this terminology. I mean, you know that weird feeling when they start telling us what the microservice is. And so this is just the beginning of the story. What happens later? Still, we have a common ground on modeling supporting software for our business, but we can't yet assume that the business will understand us. That's the beginning of a different story. So I'm trying to take it from different corners. Let's have a look at tools and documentation. The first thing that we started to realize, a common mistake that we are doing, just people are talking about documentation, they have no idea what they're talking about. They use the term documentation is as dumb as what the two other terms as dumb are validation and business rules. They can be used for everything, and everybody thinks they're talking about the same thing. They are not. Same goes for documentation. Can we do something better? I think yes, if we start framing where documentation tools or even visualization tool can be represented. So on the vertical axis, I put who are the people involved in a given, with a given artifact, with a given tool, with a given representation. And at the bottom, where still it looks like waterfallish, but we know it's not, but the level of maturity of the project. It's just something is important at the inception level, something is all important later. And this shows maybe something interesting. So if we think about EventStorming big picture, that's more or less a space. We still want to have developers, a UX designer, domain expert, and business stakeholder. Maybe not all of them, but that's the place. Is it good there? Is the big picture useful for maintenance? Maybe not, or maybe we need to run another one on a different reality. Let's move on. If we think process modeling, this goes a little bit later. It's not at the inception level. Sometimes it might help, maybe when doing startups or something, but it's usually in a little bit more mature moment. We're already into design and maybe providing some constraints for development. And moving down, software design, EventStorming, is not where you start from. Went away too early, maybe. No, I'm not risking it with the controller. But it's just a little bit in this area. The thing is, maintenance and operation, you don't need this. So one of the weak points of EventStorming and many other collaborative modeling tools is they are extremely powerful and clear if you are in the workshop. They tell very little if you were not in the workshop. Just if you were not part of the discussion, it's just sticky notes on the wall. And there are many. I have all the reason not to learn this. But I'm in a top management position, so I will nod and pretend that I understand. That's more or less what I do. And other tools, acceptance test. You don't start with acceptance test at the very beginning. It's still in the fuzziness, but they have a longer lifespan. They could turn into something different. Even though they are more powerful in the understanding area, and then they become something maybe to be used also in maintenance, but with a lot of different nuances, maybe translated. I'm now done. And this is one of my favorites. This is probably one of the artifacts with the longest lifespan. Architectural decision records. You might dump this decision or really smart decision at the end, but you want to keep the record for that. So this is going to be your long-lasting friend. And other things. Well, a context map has a pretty long lifespan. You want to discover your context map really early. I don't even know why we have UX designers here, so maybe I just did it wrong. It's mostly for developers and a little bit of expert, but nobody else actually cares about it. But it will lead into a lot of insight, even in the later stages. Ubiquitous language, you don't start with that. You clearly don't have a ubiquitous language at the beginning. You have many, many words trying to make some sense. You start building it, but then you defend it. You try to keep it. You try to make it part of every conversation as much as possible because you don't want to let it be corrupted, even if eventually it might probably happen. But if you have something completely independent, I was also thinking about having some marketing stuff or anything like this, but maybe something like a user guide or a compliance documentation. That's something that doesn't have to be at the very beginning. It might be useful later on. Different languages, different people, different moments. That's what I wanted to do, to visualize. Oh, there's another one, wiki. Your best friend, generic. You might have a lot of stuff, useful at the beginning, useful also at the end, especially if you have a lot of turnover. And, well, hard to maintain, but we all know this. So the problem here is, the question is, who are you writing for? And who is actually the reader for your documentation? Who is the target of your communication? And this is the place where we really make a lot of weird assumption, brain shortcuts, or something that doesn't really work. Tools have different purposes. Exploring is different than challenging. I use big picture EventStorming to explore large domain, to challenge the design. I go software design format, but also co-designing is different than documenting. And then sometimes you use tools just to show off something. This is how my architecture is beautiful, or maybe you just need to document for other purposes. Okay, what I wanted to say is the purpose is defining the format. We need to understand exactly what might be the target, and well, let's see how it happens. Second problem, the moment we are moving into an area close to the business, I think for me, at least for me, this is my problem, how to frame the conversation. I'm talking to the business, why are we talking? And year after year, I was looking for clarity, and this is more or less where I am. Maybe I did something wrong, but I've seen also a conversation where technical people are talking to their boss, or maybe it's just like non-technical counterpart, but am I informing my boss, or am I asking permission? Or you're just talking with your boss because, well, it's a nice person and you would like to talk to them, and then you get an advice from your boss. But is this an advice or an order dressed as an advice? That's one of the problems we might have here. Or another scenario that we bump into, like, oh, yes, we have a lot of architects, but the decision about which tools to buy, well, we're actually coming from other sources. Well, top management was deciding to have this vendor, and, well, you can still decide how to integrate it. But not exactly the nicest place to be in long-term maintenance. In some places, this was really clear. In other places, this was really, really messy, fuzzy. Messy is a nice word. So the framing for me was again like, why are we talking? Why are we having this conversation? If I don't know why this conversation is happening, I cannot choose the right media. Am I explaining what I'm doing? Or if you don't like what I'm explaining, are you challenging me, or are you still trusting me? Am I talking to a person that doesn't understand my languages, or just like some buzzword? This changes every single conversation. And the point is, a different goal needs a different communication style. So far, feels kind of fuzzy. I would like to, what works there won't work there. And this is the last ingredient to this part of the problem. This is the little voice in the head of every single software architect I've met. Like, I prepared this diagram, and I will reuse it in so many presentations because I don't want to do it again. And assuming that the people from different backgrounds will understand the same thing from the diagram, and in the illusion of reuse. We've been doing this. But the answer is no, it won't work. The other part of the problem, the result of this fuzziness is that a lot of the conversation in this space are ambiguous, are not properly defined, and probably are wrong from the start. Maybe we shouldn't even have this conversation, or maybe there's an apparent lack of trust or a lack of confidence from the other side. Just a decision might be my responsibility as a technical person, but I still need the comfort of my boss telling me that he's happy with that. And maybe I don't need this. Maybe I should be a little bit more free to do this. I wanted to be in a place like this, with a clean black and white separation and a clear red line where I like what you're saying, but it's my decision. We are not going that platform. We are using this. I know why. Oh, yes, but our competitors are going like, I know my job. I'm a technical person. I know that this stack is giving us this outcome. I know this stuff. I would like to be exactly in this place. Our responsibility, our knowledge, our decision. How many here feel they are in a place like this? Well, you can. I mean, I know some of these places exist, but you are in a lucky minority given this room. Okay. In many places, it's not black or white. It's not exactly like this. Gray is the color of this many things in this space. One tool that was helping me a lot in framing this area comes from Management 3.0, 3.0. I never know how to say it. And it's called Delegation Poker. It just defines 7 levels of delegation and really helps to frame for very specific use cases, which is the level of responsibility of delegation between 2 areas. Once again, I like getting a lot of hands raised or down. How many of you have heard about delegation poker? Very few. Okay, no, this is doubly powerful because it gives 7 levels from the tell, you do what I tell you, to sell, I will convince you. I mean, you can decide, but I will spend a lot of time to make sure that you decide to do what I want. Or consult. I will decide it, but I will ask all of your opinions. Still, it's my responsibility to decide, but I need your opinion. The 4 is usually the middle. What happens in good workshops is we agree together. We explore the solution and we find something else. Progressively, I can step out. I will tell I need a solution that has this and this requirement, and you can decide. And this should be more or less the healthy space in the business-technical relationship. Or I might be even more outside and check what the decision has been. Like, have you decided the technical stack? Yes, it's Java or it's Haskell or whatever. Yeah, fine for me. And delegate. I don't care. It's not even my problem. This is a spectrum, and it's not applicable to every single decision in the same way, so there's a lot of fine-tuning. But the way I like is, I like the framing. I like the fact that we can relate to a given level and eventually find a place where to adjust in the situation. The other interesting part is just exactly those levels are a way to fine-tune your policies where modeling processes. So how much of this decision is supported by tools, how much of this decision is free, how much of this decision is cooperative or could happen in a hidden way. It's powerful also for design. But even if I would like to be in a place where I don't want to convince anybody, and I could make my technical choices, just having a short conversation with my business counterpart, still we might be in places where I need to convince my boss or my partners to do something which is technical. I don't have all the freedom that I might need, or I don't have the budget that I might need. And this is a sentence that I was saying many times. Like usually the topic is, I need to convince my boss to run an EventStorming workshop, and my answer is usually this one. Well, convincing is waste. And there are good reasons for this. Not something especially for EventStorming, but it's a more generic problem. And the problem is, when you're getting into convincing mode on something that you know, you are offloading a responsibility on your boss. So looks like you're asking permission to do something that you should do anyway. Because if you are a pro, and if you checked your foundation, and if you think it's the right thing, then you should do it. But the moment, unless you are completely a jackass, but I'm expecting to talk with the professionals here. Like, if you check the viability of one thing, then asking permission from your boss is just now you're talking to a person that has more reputation in the organization, that has a little bit more to lose if something doesn't work, and also has a little knowledge about the topic that you're advocating or evangelizing. So the usual response would be something like, well, yeah, maybe, let me think about it. I don't know enough, let me check. And you know that this is going to mean never. But you created the trap for yourself. Or I did it to myself also in the past. But I would say this conversation is a trap, and we should try to avoid it. Second problem, when we get into those areas, it was actually an annoying surprise, because I like the deterministic feeling of architectural decision. I mean, we do have fallacies. We do say a lot of weird things when discussing architectures. But the moment we get into a larger discussion, oh, come on, this critical thinking is clearly the missing ingredient. So sunken cost. We spent already too much building that platform. We can't afford building a new one or changing the existing one. Money's gone. We need to keep it. What we have also, strawman. Pair programming will obviously slow us down. And then, well, we know it's not true, but do we need to start and discuss all of these things? Appeal to authority, unlike this one. Well, Steve Jobs shouted to Apple engineers to motivate them. What's the problem in me shouting? He did it. He was right. I'll do it again. So actually, I was checking with the list. The original plan was to put an example for each one of them. I decided, no, maybe that's going to make the talk a little bit too heavy. But there's clearly a lot of material for fallacies, and we heard probably all of them. Getting a little bit more in solution mode, this was, especially for the convincing part, this was one of the best reading of the last years for me. There's a book from Adam Grant called Think Again. And it's about I don't know how to frame it. I just remember that it's about fallacies in thinking and talking, and there's a special focus on convincing and the situation that can help us overcome some of the blockers. And this example here was the most interesting one, which is if you have strong motivation to convince a boss or anybody about something, and if you have many arguments, you feel like you should do this because this and this and this. And the feeling is, the more arguments I'm putting on the table, the more I'm going to convince you. I can give you 10 reasons why this is better than this. Psychology is telling you the opposite. It's basically telling that the more stuff you put on the table, the less you're going to convince the person. There's also something getting behind this book, if you like reading into brain science, Thinking Fast and Slow is providing an extra motivation from Daniel Kahneman. And one motivation is the first topics are stronger, and the last one is progressively weaker. You add the last one just to, well, we had 9, let's make it a 10. And then your opponent, the person with a different opinion, will hook to the weakest one. Oh, yes, but in this case, it won't work. And this was, oh, this is so annoying, because I've been doing checklists of reason why. And I guess many of us have been applying the same principle. But the downside is we are only increasing the probability of offering a weak spot. The more arguments, the weaker we're going to sound. So there's a way to overcome this, which is more interesting. I don't know if it's counterintuitive. For some people, it's more natural, which is you need to listen to the motivation of your counterpart. You need to understand what is the motivator between, what is the core value, what is the reason why they're going in a given direction. If they are pushing one choice, they have something that they want to preserve, defend, or pursue, whatever. But you need to understand the person. You need to know a little bit deeper, and then provide one. Choose the argument, but only one going in that direction. If you have it. If you clearly don't have it, then the battle is lost. But if you have something, you don't need the rest. The rest might be extra wrapping, but it's not going to get through. And then when you have that argument, well, let's sharpen it. Let's find a container, a message, a vessel, a way to expose it, which is as close as possible to the way of talking, of thinking of the receiver. It's not going to be UML. It's not going to be EventStorming. It's not going to be wordly maps. It's going to be maybe a story, maybe an image, maybe a drawing or something, but it's going to hit exactly what it hurts. And to know what it hurts, you need to know the other person. The actual story about Think Again was one of the examples was the story of a doctor in Canada that was convincing people to get vaccinated during a pandemic, basically one by one. Just one of the hardest jobs you can think during that time. And okay, that was one of the interesting strategies that were happening in that time. But the thing is, if we change the purpose of the communication, we need to change the media, we need to change the style, and we need to change the approach. So goodbye reuse, goodbye UML, and let's restart this conversation from the beginning. Even this might be a tool. I hate this. I don't know how much you hate the bullet points, but in some conversation, they only want 3 bullet points. And I know that the reality is completely different. I know that the reality is a causal loop diagram with a lot of connections and a reinforcing loop. They don't understand this stuff. They just want this stuff. And maybe that's the only way to make a message be delivered. You can still send the image as an attachment if you really are proud of it. But the message is that part, the sophisticated analysis, You need to be confident. You need to make sure that you have it, but that's not going to be the vessel of your message. People are not going to get into complicated representation. And this is just how the brain works, sadly. Second strategy, storytelling. Nothing works better than this. If you can't find an example, a story, a situation, a user journey, or getting into a narrative and getting exactly into the feeling that happens at the end, okay, well, that's probably the best thing to do. Not easy to come with a perfect example, but that's how you gain traction and resonance. I'm missing the right word. Like, this is another possible strategy, camouflage. So this is if the business people are used to see something in a given shape, that's what you're going to give them. So go to ChatGPT, write a PowerPoint presentation that looks like a big consulting company, and convince my boss to do EventStorming. If they only see PowerPoint, if they only share PowerPoint via email, as horrible as it can be, maybe the PowerPoint is. I'm not suggesting to do this, to do EventStorming. Let's make it clear. But sometimes you have to look like your enemy to make the story pass through. And, double. And still this. I mean, we can do all of our best effort to make the message pass in a form that makes it more digestible, more compatible with the receiver, but there are some things which are still not negotiable. I'm not settling to say something like, yes, some time per programming is actually going at half speed. No, I know that this stuff is not happening this way. So there's still something which is not negotiable. The thing that I know as a competence and the thing that I know that I have to handle the consequences. Another situation that we discovered there were so many inconsistencies is a classical example for measuring performance. And the scenarios here might be really different depending on the company. Small size company, some small organization can be blind. Relatively small companies, they might have one large shared dashboard with a lot of data, maybe a few official ones for different purposes, but I've also seen places where we had something called like a dashboard anarchy. Everybody has their own dashboard. Well, it's very cool in some ways, but everybody's looking at different data. And with also different interpretation. So where are you? It might be hard to say. Why is this a problem? Because if we are looking at data for performance, we might get into very, very weird places. The second part, making sure that we are all looking at the same data is usually just a matter of consolidation. So we provide the same dashboard. We provide the same links. We give a little bit of explanation about the data, the source. We had our DDD background, so probably we are also giving more meaningful names to the labels and ubiquitous language explanation to the thing that we are looking at, if we are lucky. But one of the things that we found out is actually a very good plus of domain-driven design, but I didn't know how bad were the drawbacks of the alternative. Still, I started to see that part of the conversation. So not all the domains are the same. What I mean is, if you start from an anonymous monolith, CRUD store procedure, or anyway, mostly CRUD operations, the business side still needs to understand what is going on in the system, how much are we selling, and a few other things. And to have those answers, what they do, they ask information to BI tools and also BI people. The fun thing is business wants more sophisticated information. This information is not inside the software, in the data structure, we have something which is CRUD, so they don't want to know how many times a given record was updated. They want to know how many times a given booking was transferred, for example, or a contract was amended. They want to know something more meaningful because it's meaningful for the business. And I remember listening this in the past, and I thought, like, yeah, that's not a very compelling argument. Well, surprise. Then I discovered, no, this is actually gigantic, because what you get at the end is data whose interpretation is questionable, and you also have it with delays because of data adjustment, layers of interpretation, reshuffling, aggregations, and so on. Just to make the difference visible, and just to prove that you are in the right place, if you start with a rich event-driven domain model, and if you capture the intrinsic complexity of the domain, you don't need to have this interpretation. This is speaking the right voice of the business, and you're taking away that interpretation. But the thing is, you have unquestionable data, and hopefully you have it without delays, and this is huge. It's not something that we can see very well from the developer's seat, but it's something that has a lot of consequences. On one side, this has a cost, people or adjustment done there, but let me tell you better what this cost might be. We start from an anemic domain model. We add the interpretation layer in BI. What we have is a lot of inconclusive meetings with yes, but in this case, this was coming from this scenario. And then the net result, snowballing, is months without taking obvious decisions. And I've seen this happening in many organizations. And we think only software when talking anemic domain model, and looks like a matter of style. It has gigantic consequences on the business, because you're looking at your business and you don't understand exactly what to do. And if you don't understand exactly, you don't take decision promptly. So, yeah, sad. The final part is, are we drawing the same conclusion? And once again, we get into fallacies. And when we have fallacies and misinterpretation, we get also power play. But we have a lot of things like anecdotal references. That time it was something specific. Correlation isn't causation. We're looking at data and so on. So this is not exactly an easy place to be. Can we change it? That's more or less where we want it to be. Can we improve this area? And the best idea I found for this area is actually not originally from Jim Benson. That's something that comes from Toyota and the Lean world. Is what is called an Obeya. In the Toyota world was a physical room for decision making, for managing all the relevant information to match strategy with the execution. In the same room, all the relevant information. I clearly love something like this for reasons like I like to see things, I like to decide looking at data, and I like sticky notes for some stupid reason. But then you get into organization, and the first thing you get is an objection like, oh, we cannot have a bias. That's very beautiful, but we are not a manufacturing plant, and doesn't work with us. We work remotely, blah, blah, blah. And, well, objections and objection. And, of course, I can't convince my boss to get anything like this. But that's, I think, is the last book I'm gonna put on your table. This was the other book that was really, really interesting for me. And Dave Gray, Liminal Thinking. Dave Gray is also the person behind the GameStorming and The Connected Company, and one of my favorite thinkers. And what he calls about liminal thinking, the liminal space, is a place which is in between what it is and what it can be, or also it's also the area between the complex and complicated space, but it's the transition zone, the twilight zone between two different possibilities. And he gives tools and ideas about how to handle these scenarios and how to be the person initiating change. And one of the things that I really liked was, once again, connected to convincing people. You cannot convince anybody of, if you have a vision of a great place, if this place is not there. The only way you can have, maybe it's not the only, but one way you can do this is, well, you can start behaving like the reality you want is already there. And you are behaving accordingly and building the steps to make it happen. So in this way, you're at least making some visible example of something that might work. Of course, there's something which is missing, but, oh, well, that looks interesting. I'm not trying to convince anybody with a dream. I'm trying to show somebody an example, and maybe it might be useful. I like this one. I like this approach a lot. And it turns out that some of the things that we had from our journey as DDD practitioner could work pretty well here. One thing was the context map. Another part was the process modeling, EventStorming. And they could be a good starting for having at least one portion of the information that might be needed for a big decision-making space. And Obeya is a little bit more sophisticated than this. It's clearly not context map plus process modeling becomes Obeya. No, there's a lot more other stuff there, so don't take this as oh, that's a way. It's just a little idea for starting, for seeding. And in this case, well, Miro was probably a good way because everybody was distributed. But let me look at the ingredients. First ingredient, that's stupid but powerful, is a disclaimer. And the disclaimer says, I'm not sure if the data is right. This was my understanding. Please correct me. That's more or less the same approach that we do during an EventStorming session. We are visibly wrong, but this way, you're going to find out a lot of friends. Two things that are going to happen. They are going to correct you. Is very unlikely that they're going to be contributing at the very beginning. So don't dream that everybody is going to jump and make it more beautiful, but somebody's going to tell you, you forgot this, you forgot this. Okay, you take a breath and continue refining this one. Second ingredient is the upstream processes. In this case, we were dealing with the website. There were processes for marketing, content design, and a few other things. And this, we had a format that was a process modeling. We captured some information. Okay, let's visualize this. The central part was we were hybridating the model. So, wow, that's not an EventStorming anymore. Who cares? Sales funnel, it was working better with screenshot. And screenshot were helping people. Oh, yes, that's exactly the thing that we are looking at. Plus, we had the data and graph with the linked sources. So sometimes we had to link the images. Other times we were just providing the link and the data was live, more interesting. And final thing, of course, the downstream processes with key decisions. Was this a game changer? Well, too early to say. But one thing was clearly there, which is if we are in a place where the measurement, where the performance is checked according to KPI, we need a place that has exactly the same scope. We cannot do self-organization without visualization. That's coming from from Dave Sibet, another book, but yeah, not included in this round. But also, if you need a group of people to collaborate and respond to KPIs or OKRs or anything, you need a place that has exactly the same scope of the performance management that you're using. I guess not really important. Sorry. No, it was important, but even strategic decision can actually follow the same format. So in this example, if this is instead of strategic review, okay, who is doing it? Is doing it the CEO and the board? When are we doing this? End of quarter. It's not only software that we're modeling, the same decision modeling, decision exploration tool could be used also to explore strategic decision. Being sharp in our tool for detecting domain complexity can also help at this level. Once again, provide a place where this conversation can happen. The interesting part, the kind of the final closing is you don't have to be correct. Meaning that you just need to start this conversation. If you provide good disclaimer, if you have the way to, if you take away the constraint of, oh, it needs to be perfect, it won't be. You're just probably trying to provide the first large-scale visualization tool to a company that is probably a little bit in the fog. I mean, if you need this, there's probably something which is hidden. So you can get some help and feedback just by putting things in the same place. It just has to be visible, and then people with the right information will help you and contribute. The final closing is, life is too short to ask permission to do the right thing. If you ask permission to your boss, we need to have a large room to do this and this and this, or can I set up a mirror board to have everything involved? No, it doesn't work. You just have to do it, and consistently in meetings, in decision, refer to this, maybe just as a personal tool, but eventually it might turn out to be useful not only for you. So then, is it going to happen immediately? No, clearly not. This is something that will take time. Eventually, will convince somebody, will have somebody else join in your scenario, or you have to be patient the Chinese way. I mean, you're not looking for fish, you're looking for dead bodies passing there. Maybe you still need to have the patience to get, to the I told you so moment. But we are seeing something. We are seeing a more sophisticated way of thinking, a way to thinking only bound with data, a way of thinking looking at the big pictures and not only a little local stories, and this will eventually make a difference. So I promised this was going to be getting back to the initial spoiler, and this was also a meta message. What we are supposed to do in this space is, framing the conversation correctly. Understand what is the conversation that we're having. What is the purpose? Am I convincing? Am I begging? Am I just telling you what's the story? Am I providing information to external stakeholder? That's so important. Cut and paste is not going to help you. Adapt the language to the conversation and eventually find your time to design the conversation and the communication and the wrapping. If the stakes are high, you have to invest this time. The final thing is, we do good modeling for good decision making. Provide the appropriate one also for the other type of decision making. We are deciding strategies and architectures based on models. Business is just based on models as well. But there were three. The fourth one is, be patient. Just like it's not going to happen, beautiful, we're going to start doing this immediately. If this happens, I would be worried. I would say that's all from me. Thank you for being here, and have a great following in the next days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Thank you. I think we still have time for a couple of questions. So if you have a question in the audience, we're going to throw the ball.
And that's going to be me against the beers, so it's hard.
I think we have a question right there. Yes, there. We'll see you throw a ball. That far. Thank you.
Thanks. You mentioned to be patient, but can you also give some, and you also mentioned this situation when you said, make this tool, start using it, keep referring to it for your own sake, and maybe eventually people will also pick it up. Mm-hmm. Can you give some pointers on how to increase the probability of it? My experience has been that a lot of times it's just people just completely ignore it and I'm the only person using it, even though this is not the point. The whole point is that others will use it.
I would say once again is patience. Like, okay, we are deciding, you get invited into a Zoom call to decide something. And especially if you don't have any other visualization tool, you might just want to say like, well, just a minute, I'm gonna share my screen. Like the problem with the online, I mean, the great advantage of the physical tools like an Obeya room or an EventStorming is just like, it's there and you cannot ignore it. The Obeya room is permanent, so after a while, you're just steering the people by saying like, oh, let's go in that room to decide if you have a physical space. But if you have a digital thing, okay, then it's a lot slower because the only thing you can do is just like share your screen when you are in a Zoom call. And maybe do some tactical, oh, let me check at it, or sorry, I need to show you this to support my point. So it's not gonna happen in one single meeting, but it's gonna happen the moment somebody realizes that you're having a little bit more robust points because you're backed by a structure. Or you have in your victory when somebody says, can you please share your screen like you did last time? That's your little victory. You just don't have to smile too much when this happens. But it's very little, and then it might become a habit. It takes time. Even the trick with the disclaimer was actually fun and disappointing. There is an advantage in this scenario. Like I was doing this first with the wiki page, but I had the channel like a Slack. This communication was not like sending emails. Emails provide very, very little visibility, while a channel is already a little bit more of a broadcasting mode. And I was saying like, I collected the information I had about this specific thing, and I put it in this page. And the result was we had 2 or 3 people actually checking it because they were afraid of what I was doing actually, and they were telling me, you forgot this, you also need to add this and this and this. And there was half of my brain was telling me, this is not my job. I mean, this was business documentation that some business people should have been writing. And instead it became my job, and the moment that they saw me writing, oh, you also should do this and this and this. Swallow that. Don't get angry, it's gonna happen over and over again. But eventually we had a page that was collecting all the information we needed. And it started wrong, then nobody said it was extra wrong, and became the reference for a future discussion. Okay, repeat it with another one. But you have advantages with the visibility. If you are in a physical co-located space, make it accessible, visible physically. If you are in a digital space, well, then the tools are making a lot of difference. Like Slack and larger channels is way better than sending an email to everybody, because it can be very easily ignored.